Welcome to the Pharmacist Voice podcast, where we talk about pharmacy topics and careers so you feel connected to the profession of pharmacy and inspired to contribute to it. I am your host, Ohio pharmacist Kim Newlove. This is episode 336. The Pharmacist Authors Series is back. It's back for summer 2025. I love this series. You can find the show notes with links to previous episodes of the Pharmacist Authors Series on thepharmacistvoice.com. Just click the podcast tab there in the navigation bar and find episode 336. Just a little history as we get started. I ran a Pharmacist Authors Series for the very first time in 2023. Sure, I had interviewed other pharmacist authors since this podcast started back in 2019, but I decided to make my first Pharmacist Authors series in 2023. It was very popular, so I brought it back in 2024. That had lots of downloads too, so I noticed a pattern, and now the Pharmacist Authors Series is back in 2025. The goals of this series are to get you reading some new books and inspire you to write a book yourself and maybe narrate it too. There are 3 episodes this year in the 2025 Pharmacist Authors Series, one in June, one in July, and one in August. So, one for each month of summer. This is the June episode. Dr. Jerry Levin is my guest, and he'll be talking about his book, Affirm Yourself 15 Principles to Retrain the Voice in Your Head. Again, the title is Affirm Yourself 15 Principles to Retrain the Voice in Your Head. Next month in July, Dr. Ashley Walker returns to the podcast. This time, she'll be talking about her contribution to the book Expanding Your Brilliance, Creating Effortless Abundance While Navigating Business and Motherhood. It's a collection of chapters written by pharmacist moms and published by a pharmacist mom herself, Dr. Christina Fontana. And in August, I have a very special episode with 4 guests. No, they are not all pharmacist authors. I will be interviewing a nurse author, a pharmacist ghostwriter, a pharmacist publisher, and my audio engineer friend, Julie Walthers from Whole Story Studio. She's been on the show episodes 222 and 293. She'll be back to talk more about audio engineering, Rosa's audiobook. It should be a very fun episode and might just inspire you to write and narrate your first book as well. That ends the list of authors on the Pharmacist Authors Series for 2025. Now, let me set the stage for my conversation with Dr. Jerry Levin. As we get started, Jerry will tell you his background. So, he is a pharmacist by education, and he will talk about where he got his pharmacy degree and his PhD. Then we'll discuss his book, Affirm Yourself 15 Principles to Retrain the Voice in Your Head. We'll talk about what affirmations are, why we need them, how the book helps us write them, how this book is helping me and my son, advice for aspiring authors, and more. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Dr. Jerry Levin. Hi, Jerry. Welcome to the Pharmacist's Voice podcast.
Thanks, Kim. It's a delight to be with you here.
It's my pleasure, too. You are one of my Toastmaster friends from the Toledo, Ohio area. We met back in 2019, and here you are 6 years later on my podcast. This is exciting for me.
It's very exciting for me also.
When we first met, I did not realize that you were a pharmacist by education. That was your first, degree. So could you walk me through your educational background, please?
Yes, I got a bachelor's degree in pharmacy from what was then called the Philadelphia College of Pharmacy and Science. I think it's now changed its name a couple times. I think it's University of the Sciences. It's in Philadelphia. In my second year, I was doing pretty well academically, and my organic chemistry professor called me aside and questioned me about whether I really wanted to go into retail pharmacy or whether I wanted to go to graduate school. And I honestly didn't know what he was talking about. I never heard of graduate school at the time. And it was like a real educational experience. He kind of took me under his wing And we had 2 or 3 meetings. And the next year, when I started my training in pharmacology, this was my third year in pharmacy school, I fell in love with the course and decided that's what I wanted to do. So I got a PhD in pharmacology from a school up the road, the University of Michigan. Did 2 years of postdoctoral training at Downstate Medical Center in Brooklyn, New York. And while I was there and looking for a job, one of the professors who had been at the University of Michigan when I was there reached out to me and said he is taking a position at a new school at in Toledo, Ohio. Was I interested? And I said, sure. And so one thing led to another, and I was on the faculty here at the Medical College of Ohio before there was a campus, before there was really anything. It was a really exciting time to watch the school grow and develop myself as a pharmacologist, and
And the rest is history.
the rest is history. I did that for almost 30 years.
All right. And then you've had some second careers, right?
Yes, when I retired from the medical school, I took training to become a licensed massage therapist. I did that for about 20 years, and now I'm a writer.
And that landed you on this podcast.
Exactly. And how glad I am to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I think you're the first person from our Toastmasters club to make it on either of my podcasts. I think I'm right in saying that.
What a distinction.
Yeah, thanks for being the first.
Yeah.
Yep. When you wrote the book, you reached out to me and you said, "Would you like to read my book?" And I said, "Well, yes, I would." So you sent me the book. I read the ebook version and I read it with my son, Craig. Would you like to share the title of it?
The title of the book is Affirm Yourself: 15 Principles to Retrain the Voice in Your Head.
Thank you for sharing that. How'd you come up with the title? And in general, what's the book about?
The title went through several stages. I think the final title I settled on because it was so simple and direct, and it speaks to what the book is really about. The book is about recognizing the significance of the dialogue that's going on 24/7 in our heads and taking control of that. We all go around thinking that we have no control over the thoughts we have, when in point of fact, it's the only thing in life that we have absolute and total control over. And it's the only thing that nobody else has any control over unless we give it to them. And yet we act as if we can't do anything about it, but we can. Yeah, it's a powerful force that guides and directs our actions. And if we don't like the way our life is, we need to learn to recognize the internal dialogue that is guiding the choices that we don't like, the results of, and change that dialogue. And we can do that.
One of the things as I was reading that I really noticed was that you brought up a term that I think you invented. You call them awfulmations. So it's the opposite of affirmation, right? Would you like to talk about awfulmations?
Yes, the dialogue that we engage in on an ongoing basis is mostly, I don't know how else to say it, it's a bunch of crap. It's a pack of lies. Some of it is true, for sure. Some of it is helpful. Some of it serves us, but much of it does not. I love alliterations. I'm crazy about it's one of my favorite plays. And so affirmations, affirmations, it just came to me one day. It describes perfectly for me, it describes perfectly the dialogue that I've had going on in my head for decades.
I think we all have awfulmations in our heads. And until I learned a little bit more about, assigning a term to it and what it is and that I could have control over it, I didn't really think about it, until you have that awareness of it, you don't really know. I had read another book a few years back that was about imposter syndrome. And
Mhm.
the author of that book, Dr. Lisa Orbe Austin, was talking about automatic negative thoughts or ants. And she created kind of like this, I think it was a black ant with the little legs, I think 6 legs, right? Because ants, I think, have 6 legs. And she would say that it's kind of like they're crawling around in your head and taking residence. And what you had talked about with awfulmations really resonated with me because I already had that awareness of these automatic negative thoughts or ants. My question to you would be, as pharmacists, we often have, I know that you're not practicing at this time, but pharmacists often have automatic negative thoughts when it comes to, let's say, retail pharmacists. Somebody comes up to the counter and maybe they're frowning, right? Or they've got like a unpleasant look on their face. And what goes through our heads? Automatic negative thoughts or affirmations like this person's going to be mean to me, or this person's going to want something I can't give them. And we start thinking about negative stuff all the time. So I want to use your book to help the pharmacists in my audience to overcome automatic negative thoughts or affirmations. What advice do you have for them, Jerry?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that a I don't know what to call it, a tactic that I like to use is when someone is acting in a way that isn't favorable to me or isn't pleasant to me, I like to try to imagine what might be causing that. And to assume that they're coming to get me and that they're mad at me is setting us up for an adversarial relationship. Maybe they just stubbed their toe. Maybe they just ran out of gas. Maybe they forgot what they came in the store for. Maybe their wife they just had an argument. Maybe they just found out that their mother is sick and dying, and they're trying to figure out how they're going to get to visit her. It could be any number of a million things. And to assume that it's all because of me, even if they start to talk to me in a negative way, it doesn't mean that I had anything to do with why they are the way they are. They just are the way they are. If I react to them in a negative or defensive way, I'm setting us up for an adversarial relationship. It's bound to go bad. It's certainly not going to turn out positive. If I assume that here's a person in pain from some cause that I don't need to know about and give them a little bit of compassion and try to help them, the chances that things will work out pleasantly are much greater than if I decide that they're my enemy and I have to fight them.
Assume no negative intent, I think is what you're saying. They're
Yes,
not there to get into it with me
right.
as the
Exactly.
pharmacist across the counter. So,
Exactly.
an affirmation that could be created, now this is something that a pharmacist listening to this could do, is create an affirmation according to this book, something that's personal and positive and specific to the retail pharmacy setting in this example. What could a pharmacist tell themselves? What's an affirmation they could tell themselves, even if it's just one word, to kind of get their subconscious thinking that they're not out to get me. I can help them.
I'm in a helping profession. I'm here to help. I care about the people who come into my pharmacy. I'm here to help them.
I think any of those would be great. I
Yeah.
think your book has been really helpful, at least to me, to understand what an affirmation is and how to write one. So maybe we should get into that before I start drawing out these specific examples. What
Okay.
is an affirmation and how can someone write one?
An affirmation is a positive statement that specifically addresses a negative belief, a limiting belief that we have about ourselves, our situation in life, our relationships, and so on. It's a positive statement and specific and directed towards countering some negative thing that we've been telling ourselves for a long time.
Thank you for talking about that. And the in your book, Affirm Yourself, I'm just going to shorten it to those two words because the
Yep, that's
subtitle is
fine.
kind of long. So in the book Affirm Yourself, I love that you talk about what the affirmation is, and then you talk about how to write one that is meaningful. I know that there are books out there that are books of affirmations, right? But been written by somebody else, and they're very general. So, how does your book help affirmation naive individuals write personal, meaningful affirmations?
The first thing I want to speak to before that is why should you bother to write an affirmation yourself rather than pick one from a list? And the reason is that the author of a book that's published about and has a list of I've seen books that title themselves 10,000 affirmations. This list of 10,000 affirmations categorized by relationships, finance, career, health, et cetera, et cetera. You can go crazy looking through lists like that for the one that resonates for you and still never find it because we speak to ourselves in a specific way. I have a way of speaking to myself that I recognize, and it's unique to me in some ways. And I have certain words that are trigger words that bother me or annoy me or turn me off in some way. And if the author of the affirmation uses one of these words in an affirmation, it's going to make me feel uncomfortable and I'm going to not use it. And it might sound like a great affirmation to me when I first read it. Oh, that sounds positive and nice. And yeah, yeah, I'm going to use that. And then I start using it. And then I find myself not using it because there's a word or two in there that doesn't sound like me or doesn't sound like the way I would speak to myself. And so I stop using it. And then I blame myself for not sticking with it when the fault wasn't mine. The fault was with the affirmation. So while it may be easier and quicker to pick out an affirmation from a list, if it doesn't work, if it if it's not tuned to you, then it's a waste of time. And so learning to write your own affirmations will take some time, but there are 15 principles in this book and exercises to practice. And like any other skill, anybody can learn to do this if they practice. You just need to practice. And the thing that I emphasize again and again in the book is even the most poorly written, naive, first time affirmation is going to be infinitely better than the awfulmations that you've been telling yourself for a long, long time. Yes, you may write an affirmation at first that isn't ideal, but it's certainly better than what you've been telling yourself for a long time. And by writing them and practicing them for a few days and seeing how they feel to you, if they need to be changed, you'll know how to change them. Maybe I need to change this word or I need to change that word. And you'll fiddle around with it and you'll find something eventually that works for you. But as it starts to work for you and your life changes, now the affirmation needs to be changed. So what do? Go back to the book with 10,000 list of 10,000 affirmations and find another one? No, no, you just modify your original affirmation some.
If you don't mind my kind of summarizing this, it kind of goes to a Toastmasters principle, know your audience.
Oh,
You know,
yeah,
so when you know yourself, you know what you need to hear and how you need to hear it. So know your audience and be the right messenger for yourself, basically, and use the right words.
exactly, exactly. I hadn't thought of that before, but yes, that's a lesson from Toastmasters.
Anytime you speak publicly, you should really have some sort of an audience in mind, and if you are your own audience, then yeah, I think that's a good way to say it. As I
Sure.
was reading the book, I kind of thought about that, know your audience and you are your own messenger, so be the right messenger for you. Use the
Yes,
words that you
exactly,
respond to.
exactly.
Yeah, and the way that you put it in the book, that's how I received it. I thought you did a really great job of explaining it. It's just, you know, when somebody has to reflect it back to you as the author, it might just reveal how we, as the reader, have received the message.
Right, and this is a perfect example. I hadn't thought of that way of putting it, but you did, and so now that message about being your own audience is meaningful to you. It's not as meaningful to me maybe, but it's meaningful to you, and you can use that idea in an affirmation for yourself if you want.
Yes, speaking of affirmations, I have this big hang up with time. And this is my thing, my big goal that I'm working on. In your book, you talk about having a big goal. But before you get to that, practice with some smaller goals, things that you want to deal with. But my big goal is believing that I have enough time in the day to do all the things that I want and need to do. And it's hard to believe that, but I think that I can get there someday, and affirmations could help me. And I think by saying things like, "I have enough time in my day," and trying to believe it, or "I do a good job of not getting sucked down rabbit holes on social media." If I say that, even if it's not true, someday I might believe it, and my subconscious will want it to be true, and I'll get towards my goal, Jerry. I'm laughing, but I struggle so much. I really do.
Well, we all have things like that that challenge us. I mean, it took me years to write this book because of distractions.
Yes, like social media.
Yeah,
I'm just laughing because, you go on there for a minute and you get sucked in for 5.
happens to me all the time.
Yeah, we're humans, but I do think that affirmations may be able to help me with this. So I'm happy that I encountered your book. I'm also using it to help me with my son. So I just want to use some personal examples because I am the right messenger for me. And I also am helping my son to create some affirmations for himself. And hopefully, those will work on him with the goals that he's dealing with too.
That's very inspiring to me and very reaffirming to me.
Well, I'm glad you wrote the book, Jerry. I really am.
I am too.
Yes. We've been using something called social stories for a number of years. Social stories are kind of similar to affirmations, except with social stories, we've been using negatives. And by using the negatives, unfortunately, we talk about things that we don't want to happen. Affirmations are a more positive way to talk about things that we do want to have happen.
I think that's a key, that idea brings up a key point, and that is that we spend so much time focusing on what we don't want, all of us, myself included. We spend so much time focusing on what we don't want that sometimes it gets very hard to say what we do want. If you listen to yourself in most conversations, or you listen to dialogue when you're out and about, people talking, just talking, are they speaking positively or negatively? Are they speaking about what they want or what they don't want? Most of the time, it's complaints about our health, about the economy, about people we work with, about people in our family, on and on and on and on. Complaints, 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 which are what we don't want, affirmations. If you ask yourself, when you find yourself doing that, or if you ask other people when you hear them speaking that way, well, what do you want? Very often they will have a great deal of difficulty saying what they do want. And I encountered this issue myself personally when I was trying to quit smoking a long time ago. I was trying to use affirmations and realizing that I'm not a smoker. I don't smoke. Those aren't affirmations. Those are negative statements. And it took me the longest time, it must have been months, to come up with a positive statement. And the one that I finally settled on was, I enjoy breathing fresh, clean air. And that resonated with me and it felt good to me and it was a positive statement. But it took me months to figure that out because I'm so used to talking about what I don't want. And when we talk about what we don't want, the mental picture that we get in our mind is not effective. If I say I'm not smoking, what's the mental picture of someone who's not smoking? There is no mental picture because there are an infinite number of things that a person who's not smoking could do. So the mind can't come up with a picture of someone who's not smoking. So the picture we wind up with is someone who's smoking. The mind drops the word not, and comes up with a picture of someone smoking. So thinking about not smoking, and you're smoking.
I'm picturing the old symbol from the 80s. Remember in the restaurants, we used to have the smoking section and the not smoking section. I think they used to have a picture of a head, just a generic cartoon head with a cigarette up to it and a red circle with a red line.
Or just the cigarette, the smoking cigarette.
Yep,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah, that's right. They used to have the circle with the cigarette and the line through it. Yes, so that's what came to mind, but it still conjures up an image of a cigarette or smoking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So my comment about the social stories kind of resonates with the affirmations. You know, the affirmations are positive, there is no negative. There's something that you think about that doesn't include the word don't. So, yes, they have to be positive. But the social story, on the other hand, can include negative language. It's just meant to prepare somebody for an unknown situation, a social story. That's what it is for me.
Okay.
I understand that you said you used it to help you stop smoking. Did you successfully stop smoking?
Yeah, I did.
Congratulations. And affirmations were part of that?
Absolutely.
Congratulations.
Yep. 30 plus years.
Glad to hear that. Well, how did you get interested in affirmations in the first place? About what year was it and what got you started liking affirmations?
I believe it was the 1980s. There was a company here in Toledo, Ohio called Personal Dynamics that was teaching a personal development class based around meditations. And they introduced me to a little blue book. It was about the size of a 3x5 card. It was the first book published by a lady named Louise Hay, who started Hay House Publishing. That's a big publisher today still for spiritual and metaphysical books, personal development, self help books. And they read information from her book about it was a list of different symptoms that people might have, physical ailments, symptoms, and an affirmation to affect that. And at the time, I think I was dealing with a foot pain. And I forget what the affirmation was, but they read out the affirmation and it sort of made sense to me. So I tried using it, and in 3 or 4 days, my foot pain was gone. Really got my attention. I've been interested in them ever since then and had various success or failures with them. When I was in pharmacology, practicing in pharmacology, we used to have a journal club where we would get together and talk about clinical pharmacology studies in humans. And the placebo response would always come up. in the discussions. And most of the colleagues that I had would complain about the placebo response. And I would sit there thinking, you know, this is really interesting. What if we could make it more specific and more powerful rather than trying to get rid of it? What if we tried to enhance it? And when I was writing this book, I've realized that a subtitle of my book could have been How to Enhance and Make the Placebo Response More Specific. Because whatever mechanism there is behind the placebo response, it's similar to the what's going on with affirmations.
How very clinical of you. It sounds like you have been interested in affirmations for a really long time.
Yeah.
So, over the years, over decades, I'm sure you've been consuming them and using them. When did you start writing your own?
Probably around the time that I started writing this book, which was, I hate to say it, but it's been 10 years, more than 10 years.
It took you 10 years to write this book.
Yeah, and a lot of that time was spent not writing. A lot of that time was spent dealing with what you brought up earlier, the imposter syndrome. Who am I to write this book? Who am I to think of myself as an author? I had professors tell me that I can't write.
How dare they?
Yeah, well, they were like the pharmacy customer who came up to the counter with a frown on their face for me in my life. So I've been writing them for myself for 10 years or so, on and off. Not religiously, not all the time, not following it all the time, but more and more as I got into it.
How did you ever let yourself be expert enough to write a book about affirmations?
Geez, that's a good question. The truth is that I didn't write this book. The truth is I took dictation. The bulk of the material that's in the book just came to me when I sat down and put my fingers on the keyboard and started fiddling around writing, and then, "Oh, I could write this. Oh, I could write that."
When you say you didn't write this book, what does that mean?
It means I didn't come up with the ideas. The ideas came to me. I didn't generate this. I didn't manufacture it. I've heard songwriters talk about just sitting down fiddling with a guitar and all of a sudden a song comes to them. Painters pick up the paintbrush and just start fiddling with the paints, and then all of a sudden an idea comes to them. And that's the way it was. If I say I wrote this book, it sounds to me like I'm saying these are my ideas. They're not. I don't know whose ideas they are. I didn't steal them from anybody, but they came from somewhere other than my conscious mind. They came through me.
That's kind of spiritual, really.
Yes, exactly.
I know another author who I believe has been part of this series, Dr. Christina Fontana, and she says she gets her downloads from God. You know, God inspires her to do certain things, and she just has such a fire under her. She follows it until it's complete. And I almost hear you saying something similar.
Yeah, I didn't want to go there because different people have different beliefs about that kind of thing. And this is not a spiritual or religious book, but it definitely came from a higher source than human consciousness.
I think that is completely fair to say. And thank you for sharing that. Inspiration comes from many places.
Right.
I know that these are not the standard questions that I have asked in the past, but I really appreciate you answering them for me
Sure.
be- because there may be somebody out there thinking of writing their first book and they don't feel like they are expert enough, although they've been a customer of the thing that they're talking about for many, many years, like you have been. Yes. So that is inspirational. Thank you very much for talking about that.
Sure. I would say to anybody who's thinking of that, that just get started. And like anything else, like learning to ride a bike or learning to roller skate or whatever. You're going to fall down, you're going to scrape your knees, maybe your elbows, but you'll get over it and practice, practice, practice. There's a story that I share in the book that I love that's appropriate here, and that is about a gentleman going to Carnegie Hall, and he's afraid he's going to be late for the concert, and he doesn't know where Carnegie Hall is, and he stops a gentleman in the street and says, "Excuse me, sir, can you tell me how to get to Carnegie Hall?" And the elderly gentleman says, "Sure, I can. Practice, practice, practice." And it's so true of everything. We expect to be great out of the chute, and nobody is. One of my favorite quotes from an author is from Ernest Hemingway, and he said, I'm going to clean it up a little bit. He said, the first draft of everything is crap. He said it a little cruder than that, but
Thanks for keeping it PG, Jerry.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
yeah, sure.
I know what you mean. Not everybody is an expert when they first start writing. It's like a muscle, the more you flex it.
Actually, nobody is an expert when they get started. Nobody. We all have to practice. All the professionals that you see who perform so well, whether it's an athlete or a musician or whatever, they practice in a way that none of us would want to do. That's what gets them where they are. They practice, 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 and then they practice some more. And then they get up tomorrow and they practice again.
I hear you. Audio engineering was like that for me when I started podcasting. Practice, practice, practice. I
I'm
swear.
sure.
I had to practice a lot.
I'm sure.
Now, Jerry, I know that you were enjoying affirmations for decades, and then it took you about 10 years to write this book. But tell me, why did you end up writing it?
Because I believe that the appropriate use of the things that are in this book, the ideas that are in this book, can change lives. I believe that most people, if not everybody, most people are walking around dissatisfied with some aspect of their life, or maybe multiple aspects of their life. We either want more of something or less of something. We've tried again and again to change those things unsuccessfully. And we're frustrated and disappointed, and it all adds up to a negative self image. The way to change that is to recognize the affirmations that we have been telling ourselves, and then counter that with specific affirmations that will change the way we're doing things. One of the things that I stress in the book is the proof that what we say to ourselves matters. There are examples from sports, from healthcare, and from physics and parapsychology showing that our thoughts are powerful, powerful tools, maybe the most powerful thing.
Thank you for sharing why you wrote the book. It sounds to me like you want to help people, so that's one thing. And then also,
Exactly,
you want to give them a tool to overcome their challenges.
exactly.
People need tools to overcome things, and I think you've also created this awareness that of the affirmations by writing this book. A lot of us don't even think about the negative things that we say to ourselves and about ourselves, but then we don't realize we have a problem until we have that awareness of it. So I think you've helped with awareness, but then you've also
Thank
given
you.
us a tool.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hope you feel validated because I really did enjoy this book and I plan on using it. Now, there's something else about this book that is kind of unique. I thought it was really cool that you had codes embedded in the ebook so that I could click it and I could watch a YouTube video and I could go to your website and download certain bonus things. So, would you like to talk about some of the bonuses that are in this book?
So the video that's in the referenced in the book is a YouTube video that I made to give people a personal experience of the power of our thoughts. It's a simple video that I'd rather not say the whole thing because it'll give it away and maybe detract from the first experience, but it shows that a simple thought will affect your body. A simple thought will affect how your body behaves. And if it can do that, it will affect how you perform in any activity that you engage in. It will affect how you manage your facial expressions in a conversation you're having, which will in turn affect the other person, and so on. They're very powerful and very subtle and easy to miss until you try to really pay attention.
Thank you. I thought it was great that you embedded a YouTube video in there. So props to you. I thought that was awesome. And
Thanks.
then there's other links that go to your website. And then I click on the book and put in my little password, and I got access to additional content, which I thought was really cool as well. Would you like to talk about any of the additional content?
The additional content is there's an infographic there that summarizes the 15 principles for writing affirmations. There is a copy of what I call the law of consciousness, which is a summary of my ideas about, they're not all my ideas, but my summary of the ideas about the power of our thoughts and how they work and how they don't work. And there is also, despite my wanting people to learn to write their own affirmations, there is my list of sample affirmations that might help the reader recognize a scaffolding or a template on which they can build their own affirmations. My intention was not that you will pick the best one for you and just use it. My intention was, oh, I see, I can write it like this, or I can write it like that, oh, this is close, I'm going to edit it. I encourage people to edit them. When I first started using affirmations, no one ever told me this, but I assumed that they were like sacred prayers that I had to repeat verbatim. Nobody ever told me that. But that was the assumption I made, and I never thought about changing them until I did. That was a real aha for me. Oh, I can make these, I can customize these to myself. Wow, I can make this suitable for me in this moment and then change it again next month when the situation is different. That's what those samples are for, just to give people ideas about how to write them and how to think about them.
Thanks for talking about that. Yes, I have definitely gone to the website and clicked on the book in the navigation bar there and consumed those resources. And then there's the Facebook group too. I think there was a link to it in the book, right? I think that's how I found out about it. Would you like to talk
Yes.
about the Facebook group?
So the Facebook group is intended for questions. I look at it every day. It's intended for people to come ask questions, which you have done. I think we've had some very nice exchanges there. And for people to share ideas that they're using. It's a private group for people who have read the book.
And it's free.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. I thought it was worth joining. So I just wanted to make sure to bring that up so you could talk about it and for me to
Thank
say
you.
that I'm in the group. And as I'm getting started writing affirmations, because I am new to this, I am, yes, posting them. And like I said, Jerry's taking a look at them and I am getting feedback, like he said, which is great because I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. But he's affirmed that I'm headed in the right direction, which is good. I'm used to making social stories and picture cards, so I actually feel like I took to it pretty easily. And that's a good thing because I do plan to use them in the future. You have given me such a great start and encouragement. Thank you so much, Jerry.
I love the idea that you had about putting them on a picture card, a little meme like a little meme.
It's basically the Instagram post template from canva.com. So
Ah,
that's my secret.
okay.
That's how I'm doing it. Yep, but then I just use them, and what I'm doing is I'm downloading them and I put them into an album in my photos section on my iMac. I'm a Mac user, so I put them into my photos and I make an album so that I can use them for quick reference on the road with my son. I was talking to our mutual friend Mike Anstat, and I was asking him, "How do you keep track of yours?" Because he said, "Hey, I read your review on Amazon.com of Jerry's book." And I'm like, "Oh, good." And he said, "Yeah, I have affirmations too. Hopefully he doesn't mind me talking about this." And I said, "How do you keep track of them?" Because I'm a very visual person, and so is Craig, my son, who I'm helping use them. So I told him about the photo album, and he showed me something that looked like a checkbook. So, Jerry, how do you intend for people to keep track of their affirmations so they can use them once a day or more?
I think simple is the best way, and most of us today have a smartphone, and the smartphones all have a notes app, and that's the simplest way. But there are also specific apps for affirmations. And in the last chapter of the book, I have a list of additional resources for people to look at. And one of them is these apps, and I discussed that briefly in the book. I use an iPhone, so those are the ones I'm familiar with. But I imagine that at least one or two of these are also available for Android phones. Some of them will allow you to put in your own affirmations, and that's another way to do it. Another simple way, and you have it in your pocket all the time.
Those are good suggestions. I heard apps and the notes function on a smartphone. Yeah, good
Yep.
suggestions. Thank you. And then I suggested, of course, the photos because I'm kind of a visual person. My son, Craig, that I know of, does not read, write, or speak. If he's been talking to you, Jerry, let me know what he's been saying. But, anyways, the picture says 1,000 words. So I do the photos paired with the words. That's how I do it. Yeah. And in the book, I just wanted to also mention that I really enjoy the quotes and things that you have in there and book suggestions. I believe at the end in the last chapter, in addition to having the app suggestions, you have a list of books that were mentioned, which is really cool because it reminds me of podcast show notes where I refer people to the show notes for things that were people, places, and things that were mentioned in the podcast. And one of the books that you mentioned was a book called The Brain That Changes Itself by Dr. Norman Doidge, MD, and I'm actually listening to that on audiobook now. So thank you so much for the suggestion.
It's an amazing book. I put that in there because it was a great resource for me on the issue of what's called neuroplasticity. It's a highly technical term describing a very powerful principle. When I went to graduate school, we were literally taught that when you're 25 years old, your brain is fixed and can't change. And it was the belief back then in the 60s and 70s, and certainly I don't know when it started to change really, but the truth was all around us all the time because people older than 25 years old are all the time learning new skills. Where everybody has learned new skills. You learn a new route to work when you change jobs. You learn a new language. You learn new recipes. You take up new hobbies. You learn a musical instrument. It happens all the time. And some instances it's more difficult. But even stroke victims who lose the function of an arm, for example, can learn with sufficient practice. And it takes a lot of practice in that case, but they can learn to use their arm again. Maybe not as elegantly as they could initially, but they learn to function.
That's the chapter I'm on right now, actually. The stroke victim one. I think it's
Yeah.
chapter 5. Learning to Move and Speak Again, I think is the title of the chapter. But my sister in law had a car accident. So she has a traumatic brain injury. and she doesn't have a stroke. She never had a stroke, but she still struggles with movement on just one side of her body. It was the side that was impacted by the car collision. She got T-boned on her side of the car more than 10 years ago and is unsatisfied with how she can speak and move her limbs. So I'm wondering if there might be something in here that can help her. So thank you for the suggestion.
It just takes practice. I mean, it's a lot of practice, but it just takes practice. The brain will change to learn to figure out, it will change its connections to do whatever we're asking it to do. But we need to ask a lot of times in that case.
I believe that she wants to improve. So if there's something concrete or doable, like an easy, not easy, but easy to communicate for me, sequence of steps she could take and something that she could specifically work on, then I think she'd be very interested in trying it.
How is she with reading?
She can't remember. She has short-term memory loss, so she remembers best things that happened at the time of the car collision or prior to. So she a lot of times she asks about if I've seen people from high school. I probably shouldn't talk too much about her on the air here, but yeah, she doesn't do well with remembering recent things. So if I give her a list of things to do, I think she would, yes, do well with that. Hope that makes sense.
Okay. I was thinking about maybe having her read the book or reading the book to her.
I thought about that too, Jerry, honestly, but I don't know if she would remember it. But if I wrote her some affirmations that
Right.
combine the exercises that perhaps are in this book by Dr. Deutsch, maybe, just maybe, there could be some synergy between Dr. Deutsch's book and affirmations. And wouldn't that be awesome?
I think that's a great idea.
I would love that. I would love for her to not hate the way that she sounds when she talks anymore, or not be dissatisfied with the movement that she has in her legs. She wears a brace on her leg because she's got some mobility issues. And I think she wants a dog, but she's afraid of falling. And, anyways, I think I've probably said too much. So I'm going to stop there. But back to your book. Thank you for suggesting even more reading in your book. That's one of my favorite things when people suggest books, whether I'm watching a TV show, a radio program, a podcast, another book. I mean, I find that's additional value for me. So I loved that. Is there anything you'd like to say about the books or the quotes that are in your book?
Just that I love quotes. They're very meaningful to me. I have a big collection in my computer, and I share them on my Facebook page on a regular basis.
I've seen that. The way that you have used those quotes in your book, Affirm Yourself, have been very appropriate. Good choices.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely. Well, I know that we covered what the book is about, why you chose the title. We haven't talked about who should read this. I mean, is it just pharmacists? Who should read your book, Jerry?
Everybody who starts to write a book, I think, figures this book is for everybody. But if a book is for everybody, it's for nobody. And that's true like for a podcast, for anything. If it's for everybody, it's for nobody. My book is for people who are, like I said earlier, dissatisfied with some aspect of their life and want to change that. But then there's a certain group of those people who have tried to make those changes unsuccessfully and are frustrated with it. And then there's a subgroup of those people who are willing to do some work for themselves, willing to be a little bit uncomfortable practicing something new, willing to try something they haven't tried before. That's who the book is for. That's who the book is really for. If you are dissatisfied with something in your life, and even if you're frustrated with your attempts so far, but you're not willing to do a little bit of work and be a little bit uncomfortable practicing some new skill, it's not for you.
I like that directness. I really do. People that have an open mind, they're interested in personal development, and they're not afraid to do hard things.
It's not especially hard, it's just uncomfortable. We have to get out of our comfort zone. Everything that you want that's meaningful in your life, everything that could be meaningful in your life that you want, that's not in your life now is not there because it's in your zone of discomfort. And You have to get out of your comfort zone. We all have to get out of our comfort zone to achieve things that are new and different.
Well said. Thanks, Jerry. Jerry, is there a certain point in somebody's life when they should read this? I know we just talked about who specifically should read this, but when should they read it?
Now would be a good time.
Good answer. I didn't know if there was like a certain amount of frustration they should tolerate first, or if they should just go right to this.
They should tolerate as much just frustration as they need to. There's a saying that we won't make a change until staying the same is more painful than changing. So stay the same until it gets painful enough to make a change. It's not hard to do. It's just going to take some practice and dealing with some discomfort and dealing with the voice in your head telling you you can't do it, but you can.
Pharmacists can be perfectionists. So sometimes they delay doing things or they put everybody else first. Anybody listening to this, I give you permission to put yourself first and read this book right away. Don't wait.
If you're a perfectionist, that's very appropriate in the practice of pharmacy. You don't want to be giving the wrong doses or the wrong medication to the wrong patient, for sure. But perfectionism in the pursuit of learning a new skill, any new skill, is pointless because you're not going to be perfect to start with. And maybe there is no perfection in a skill. As records are being broken all the time in athletics, who is perfect as an athlete? Nobody. Everything can be a little bit better and a little bit better. There's a lesson there for us. Do your best and move on, and you'll do better tomorrow.
And remember that the affirmations are meant to help. They are meant to be a tool. And if that tool doesn't work for you for whatever reason, find a new one. But at least it's something to try.
Yes,
Jerry, it sounds like this book is to create awareness about affirmations and a little bit of instruction on how to write them to make them personal. Is there anything else that you want them to do with the information in the book?
I don't think so. I think that covers it.
Awesome. I like simple, so that's good. Jerry, where can my audience buy your book?
Amazon. There is a Kindle version and a paperback version, as you know, and I'm working on the audiobook now.
That's right. Would you like to talk about the audiobook?
The audiobook is going to be an adventure for me because I'm using a service online that will allow me to use AI to create the audiobook. I've already provided this website with a 45-minute sample of my voice reading from the book, and that website created a voice clone that I can now feed the text of the book to, and it will create the audiobook. I don't have to read the whole thing. It will create the audiobook in a voice. Uh, the little samples I've gotten so far sound to me like me. I haven't had other people listen to them, but I'm going to ask my daughter and my wife to give me their opinions. I'm pretty sure that they'll affirm what I've said. And then I need to change the text of the book because some things will need to be done differently. Like the little quotes in the book, the attribution is after the quote. But I think in the book, it will be important to have the voice read, here's a quote from so and so. So I need to change little bits of the text throughout the book. Just reading the text of the book won't work entirely.
As an audiobook narrator, I've got to say, good for you catching those things because those are the things I usually have to go through with my clients to make sure that I'm creating the book that they intended to publish.
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be different, and like the exercises in the book, I need to create a workbook that the people on the audiobook who buy the audiobook can download this workbook as well and have a place to do the writing for all their exercises that are in the book.
I did that too. It's a downloadable PDF or a companion PDF. So, yeah, absolutely. It has been done. It can be done again. You got this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Good on you looking out. You got this, Jerry.
Thanks.
What's your goal? Like, when do you want the audiobook and the companion PDF to be coming out?
This fall, September, October.
Very good. I can't wait to hear that. That's going to be awesome. I don't know if I've ever consumed an audiobook that has an AI voice. I just don't know if I have. So yours will be the first that I know for sure. It's an AI voice. Very trendy of you, Jerry. I like this.
Thanks.
Yeah, good luck with the production on that.
Thanks.
You are welcome. We covered so much during our conversation today, but I don't want to forget anything. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about? Maybe some affirmations for pharmacist authors that you've written that you want to share or anything? What you got?
Yes, as I mentioned to you earlier, I've created a Google Docs that is going to be I'm going to make shareable, and we'll put a link to it in the program notes for this podcast so that there'll be sample affirmations for someone who is an aspiring author, whether they're a pharmacist or not, for them to read and modify when it seems appropriate. And also, there'll be a link in there to my website. There'll be a link to the book on Amazon. And also, I'm going to be having a live Q&A session on Zoom on July 14th at 7 in the evening, Eastern Time. And the link for that Zoom Q&A, which will be open to anybody, whether they've read the book or not. If you're trying to decide whether you want to read the book and you've got some questions, this would be a good place to come. That'll all be in that Google Docs.
Thank you for all of that information. You're doing my job for me. I love it. I love it when people provide me links and information and then talk about it. So I don't forget to talk about it in the outro, as I call it. Excellent. Anything else before we wrap this up?
I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, Jerry, thank you so much for being here on the Pharmacist Voice podcast. You take care. Have a great summer.
You too, Kim. Thank you very much for the honor of being with you.
My pleasure.
Thank you again to Dr. Jerry Levin for being my guest on episode 336 of the Pharmacist's Voice podcast. I hope you enjoyed hearing about what affirmations are, why we need them, how the book helps you write them, how the book is helping me and my son, and advice for aspiring authors. We covered a lot during our interview. I have a lot of information for you today in the show notes. So, in the show notes, you will find a link to Jerry's book on Amazon.com. While you're there, check out my review of Jerry's book. You'll also find a link to Jerry's website, a link to the Google Doc that Jerry talked about. It has sample affirmations for aspiring authors. Real quick, I'm going to read one to you. It says, "My writing makes a difference for me and for everyone who reads it." You'll find more affirmations for pharmacist authors in that Google Doc. Use the link in the show notes. Also in the show notes, you will find a link to the Zoom Q&A session that Jerry talked about. It's on July 14th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And one last thing, there are always a ton of links in my show notes, so check all of those out. You can also check out the previous year's episodes of the Pharmacist Authors Series when you have a chance. They're all in the show notes. I believe there are at least 15 links listed. Everything you need is on thepharmacistvoice.com. Click the podcast tab in the navigation bar and find episode 336. If you know a pharmacist who might be interested in reading Affirm Yourself or writing their own book, please share this episode with them. And if you like this podcast, come on back. We've got a lot more coming up in 2025. Subscribe to or follow the Pharmacist Voice podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out, especially for the next 2 episodes in the Pharmacist Authors Series. Subscribe and listen to both of them. Thanks so much for listening today. I will talk to you next week.